I worked for a couple of firms who strictly handled insurance defense. So I was representing all the big time carriers, and I was new. I was still, a relatively young attorney at that point.
And any big carriers that the audience would know of?
Sure. So Citizens Property Insurance Corporation by far was my biggest client. And I represented them. I represented Heritage. I represented United Property and Casualty. I represented Security First. Tower Hill. You name it. Probably 10 different carriers that I was dealing directly with. The adjusters on the litigation side. Reviewing the claims, reviewing the files, understanding what their position is, what I thought my position was. So it was a pretty interesting experience to see it firsthand from the insurance company side. My business partner, Jeremy Schilling, and I, we met at our last firm. So I was doing insurance defense for a few years, and kind of one day I just had enough. I was tired of looking at claims, evaluating them, telling my adjuster, hey, you need to pay this claim, and they're telling me, no, we don't. And they would actually instruct me to go find an engineer to evaluate the property so that they can come up with a position that's consistent with what the insurance company already came up. And my thought process was, well, how is that fair? Right? Because what if the engineer's position is that the insurance company was wrong in their original valuation? But that was never the goal. They had specifically intended to find engineers who they know they were paying to basically write reports that was favorable to them. And I had enough because I had seen it. I was forced to go to many inspections. I'll never forget. I went to an inspection in the Keys. This was after Hurricane Irma, and the Keys got slammed from Hurricane Irma back in 2017. I went to the inspection with our engineer, and the engineer's walking the property with me, and it was a denied claim. And I'm looking at this property. It's right on the water, and this house just got shredded. There was no doubt in my mind that the hurricane had affected this property. And candidly, the engineer said the same thing to me. So I called up my adjuster while I was on site at the inspection of the Keys and said, look, this is what's going on. The engineer believes that there's wind damage to this property. What do you want me to do? And the response from the adjuster was, then don't get a written report. Don't get a written report. It was insane. And, that was one of the focal points that I remember towards the end of my career with the insurance companies that just said, look, I don't feel good doing this anymore. And then I had an opportunity. I switched sides, started suing insurance companies for a firm based out of Fort Lauderdale. And then 2 years ago, Jeremy and I opened up our own firm.
And how'd you meet Jeremy?
So we met at the prior firm. So he was also from the defense side. He actually used to work, when he was in law school, he worked for Universal Property and Casualty. He was in their special investigations unit, basically investigating fraud and things like that. He then went to a defense firm and then left that defense firm at the plaintiff's firm that we were at suing insurance companies. We met there, and he was bugging me, every other month saying, we got to do this on our own. Let's do this on our own. Let's do it on our own. I was like, no, I'm content. And then finally came to the point where I was like, I can do this, and we basically, on a whim pretty much, I remember it was a Friday, we went to the bank, we figured it out, opened up a bank account, and we moved on to bigger and better things.
So, just talking about litigation, I know you're recently in Fort Myers on a big legal lawsuit, and against Citizens, correct?
It was against Citizens, yeah.
Are you able to talk about that case?
Yeah, sure. So it was a pretty interesting case, and I'll go through some of the facts so that everybody understands what happened here. But long story short is my clients had purchased a property in 2020 in Fort Myers. They got a pre-purchase inspection report. The inspection report basically advised them there was about 7 years of useful life left on the roof. In the report, there's no indications of any damage to the roof, and there's options for the inspector to fill that out if there's torn, missing shingles, wear and tear, active leaks, things like that. Blank, nothing. Not a single comment on it. They then get insurance with Citizens. In fact, Citizens is the insurance company that required them to get that 4-point inspection. So they accepted the property as is, issued the policy, and then in 2021, my clients had some intentions to renovate their kitchen. Their contractor comes over the first day to start the demolition, and when he goes to pull off the old cabinets, there's a microwave sitting above the stove, and the microwave basically fell into his arms, and he's like, this is odd, this is basically hanging on to nothing. And he looks behind the wall where the cabinets were, which you couldn't see from the naked eye unless you took off the cabinets, puts his hand up to the wall, and his hand basically goes through the wall. And it basically disintegrates. and it was raining that day, and all of a sudden there's water pouring into the property, and he was smart enough, the contractor, to take a video of it. And the homeowners were out, they left the premises because they didn't want to bother the contractor. So he calls them, they come home, he's like, look, this is what's going on, takes a video of it. The guy goes up on the roof to figure out what's going on, figures out where the leak is. They call up a roofing contractor that day. The roofer comes out in the rain, does a patch to the roof, and they report the insurance company that exact day. No delay. And what do citizens do?
Deny the claim.
Wear and tear. Wear and tear. So remember, they just had insured this property the year before. They had a 4-point inspection saying there were 7 years of useful life. And then at the instant that they have a claim, deny.
And not just any claim. We're talking catastrophic, Category 4 hurricane that just comes right through, rips everything apart. And every single home in that neighborhood is probably found a claim, but for some reason they decide, let's just deny this claim.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I have clients all the time, especially after hurricanes, where they're like, well, my next door neighbor is the same insurance company as me, and they paid for the roof. Why didn't they pay for mine? It just goes to show there's no consistency. You could have a neighbor with the same exact insurance company, same type of claim from the same storm, yet inconsistent results.
Yeah.
It boggles my mind, the inconsistencies in the adjustment of claims.
And in the insurance carrier world, they'll have different desk adjusters representing all the different claims. So no desk adjusters alike, and then those desk adjusters are different field adjusters that are their arms and feet per se. And so if you get the wrong field adjuster or the wrong desk adjuster who's having a bad day, then your claim might just get denied.
Simple as that. You're right. They could be having a bad day. They might hate their job. They're working. They're overworked. I mean, yeah. I've dealt with these citizens adjusters. After hurricane come through Florida, basically, a lot of them are on these CAT teams, right? So these for whenever there's catastrophic damage, they're on a CAT team. And they could be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week. And they're miserable. They're not sleeping. And so you're right. If they got a bad day, they might just say, you know what? I've reviewed everything. No, thank you. We'll deny this one.
Sure. I feel almost every single desk adjuster at State Farm, though, is always having a bad day. Yeah. Because I probably have had almost no luck with any one of those claims after Hurricane Ian.
Yeah. Well, in the industry on our side, we call them Snake Farm.
So we kind of talked about denied claims, and the same thing kind of goes with underpaid claims. I can't tell you how many times clients they'll sign me on to represent them because they got a claim, and insurance carrier, they came out, they inspected, but yet they only want to give them $4,000, $5,000, or maybe even just they'll say they're underdeductible. But yet half the roof is torn. They have water stains throughout their house, and they're going to need at least $40,000 to $50,000 minimum to fix it up. So, what's your experience with the underpaid claims?
Well, especially with the most recent hurricane that we had, Ian, I'm seeing estimates. We're already in litigation on some of these claims. And I'm seeing estimates, and I'm looking at the estimates, and pretty much every estimate that the insurance company writes, they use this software, as I'm sure you know, Xactimate.
Yep.
And I'm not overly familiar with using it, but I've seen the estimates, and each line item is numbered, right? And so I'll see on some of the estimates, it'll go line item 2, 3, 13, 14, 19, 28, and I'm like, where are the rest of the line items? Well, we know the answer. The adjuster wrote the estimate based on the damages that they thought should be covered under the policy or what they believe was damaged. And then some manager or supervisor from the insurance company goes in and literally deletes the line items that they don't want to cover, they don't want to pay for. And so you've got an adjuster who's out there firsthand seeing the damage, writing an estimate, yet then a manager who's never been to the property goes in and takes line items out to reduce the amount of the estimate, ultimately the amount that they would owe under the policy or what they're paying. So I'm seeing that time and time again. The other thing I'm seeing too, a big thing, is depreciation. The carriers come up with these numbers for depreciation, basically what depreciation is under the policy. Most policies are what's called a replacement cost value policy. And under that policy, basically it's their obligation to first pay the actual cash value. And actual cash value is basically just replacement cost value minus depreciation. Typically, the depreciation is recoverable. So in a perfect scenario is you do the repairs, and once you do the repairs, you submit the invoices to the carrier, and then they release the depreciation. The issue that I have on a lot of these estimates is how are they coming up with these numbers for depreciation? I'm seeing some estimates where they're taking out $40,000 in depreciation. What is your formula to come up where you're reducing the amount of actual cash of replacement cost value to actual cash value? Where's that $40,000 figure coming from? And candidly, I'll take adjusters' depositions. They don't have an answer. There's no answer.
Sure.
They don't know. And the only people that know are the insurance company. Candidly, I don't even know if they know. But, you know, they see it. Oh, we plug it in the system. Great. $40,000 less we have to pay.
Yeah, I feel it for them. It's almost as if it's a risk game for them. You know, if they think they can get away with it, the homeowner, then they're going to deduct it.
Yeah.
Me personally, I have. But have you noticed a big issue with the time frame of these claims after Hurricane Ian?
Yeah. I mean, I'm still seeing claims now that were timely filed shortly after the hurricane, and there's still no decisions. Right, because they're getting one adjuster assigned to another one, and the current adjuster doesn't know where the last adjuster left off. So there's still some people who still don't have a decision, and the hurricane was in September of last year, and There's not a single dollar in payment.
Yeah, I have one claim that was just with Heritage, and we had a reinspection that occurred back in February. 2 months later, you know, following up, trying to get in hold of him. He says he delivered it to Heritage, and then I called Heritage to the desk adjuster, and they said that they don't want to use it. Said that they want to send someone else out. So another 2 months go by, they send someone else out, and you know this guy is now the first guy was an independent contractor, so he wrote what he saw. The next guy they saw was a direct employee of Heritage, and sure enough, you know we got a small amount number, and that file is going to litigation. Because we can keep going back and forth, and then next we know another 6 months go by. So it's unfortunate, but I'm seeing this across the board with insurance claims.
You know, the most difficult aspect of that is explaining to the homeowner, right? Because the homeowner's thinking, look, I paid my premiums. I didn't ask for this hurricane to come through. The damage is evident. There's photographs. Where's my money, right? And that conversation is the toughest to have because there's no magic 8 ball you can rob and just be like, yeah, you're going to get a payment tomorrow. And so it's really, you have to have the ability to speak with these homeowners. And again, I'm a homeowner. You know, unfortunately for me, I live on the East Coast and I didn't suffer damage from the hurricane, but I've seen it from so many people and I've litigated so many files over the years. Unfortunately, if the carrier doesn't want to pay, these things don't just resolve overnight. And it's difficult because there's people that are displaced from their home. I'm sure you have clients that are living in trailers, right? Or
their cars.
Or their cars, right? Because they can't. They have kids. And the kids are going to school and the kids are upset because they can't go and sleep in their own bed at night because the insurance company didn't pay for their parents' claim.
Yeah, I have one file that's literally just like that. The homeowners, they can no longer afford to live anywhere else. So they're sleeping in their car as we wait the final decision from FIGA. It was for a UPC claim, and UPC went bankrupt. So when they go bankrupt, the Florida Guarantee Association comes in, and they're backed by Florida. So surprise, anything that's state-run or state-backed is usually pretty slow. And you send an email, you call them up, and they tell you that, listen, it may take us 30 days to get back to you. And it's frustrating. I can only imagine what they're going through.
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine having to live in my car when you own a home, you have insurance, you're paying your premiums, they're going up every year, you file a claim, and there's no money. So,
I agree.
Yeah, I feel for them.
So in your words, what would you recommend to those homeowners? What would you tell those homeowners to do if they're in that situation?
I mean, it's simple. You got to file a lawsuit. I mean, you don't want to delay it. You know, one thing that Jeremy, my business partner, and I discuss all the time is these insurance companies, especially the big ones like the State Farms, the Allstates, you see them all over the news. You see them in commercials. You see their marketing tactics, you know, like a good neighbor, State Farm is there, right? You see the Allstate commercials, and it's almost like from the marketing that the insurance companies do, some of the homeowners are reluctant to want to sue their insurance company because they see the marketing and they feel like, I don't want to be that person to sue my insurance company. And then they win. The insurance company wins. If their marketing is having that effect on the consumer doesn't want to sue their insurance company, then the marketing is effective.
Sure.
Right? So there's tons of clients that, you know, they've never been in a lawsuit before. They never expected this to happen. And it's such a common theme in conversations where people are reluctant to want to sue their insurance company. And I always tell them, then they win, right? Then they're getting what they wanted. Because if you go away, that's less money they have to pay on a claim.
So I feel a lot of people, they're scared to file a lawsuit just because they watch a lot of Law and Order, and they feel that that's going to be me on that stand being grilled for 3 days straight, 2 weeks long, right. But it never really ends up like that.
Right. You know, everyone thinks they're going to be sitting in a room and they're going to be handcuffed with a spotlight right on their face, and it doesn't work like that. And that's, you know, and you're right. They see the TV shows. They've never been in a lawsuit. They don't understand what it means. So, you know, it is difficult for some people because, especially the honest homeowners, they don't want to have to go through this process. They don't want to have to sue someone. No one ever wants to have to sue someone, but unfortunately, that's just the nature of the insurance market right now.
Yeah. And when it goes to lawsuit, what exactly does it cost the homeowner?
So, I mean, obviously every firm is different, but, my firm specifically when it comes to homeowners claims, as of right now, we could talk about the changes, but like for instance, a hurricane claim, we work on a contingency fee basis.
Yep.
So the benefit to the homeowners, it doesn't cost them anything out of pocket. They're not writing me a check for a retainer fee. And I tell them, look, I only win if you win. I only get paid if you get paid. And I think when a homeowner hears that, I think in their mind they think, well, this attorney's going to have to work hard then, because if he's not getting paid unless I do, then he's going to work extra harder on my claim, because otherwise he's working for free. So that's the benefit under the old laws, is that if you sued your insurance company, there was a mechanism to get at least part of the insurance fee, or the attorney's fees paid for.
And now let's say if there isn't a public adjuster on the claim, attorneys typically will charge a percentage on top of that, correct?
You're saying if before a lawsuit, or what?
If I'm a homeowner and let's say I haven't used a public adjuster, I'm just going straight to an attorney. Typically, the attorney will charge 10 to 20% on addition plus the attorney's fees.
Correct, you're right.
Because someone needs to prep the file, do the Xactimate, go out there, do the pictures and everything else, do the legwork, what a public adjuster typically does. So when someone like me teams up with you, I do the initial work, I prep the file, and I give it to you so you can just focus on the litigation part and not the actual adjusting part.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's why people always ask, well, what should I go with an adjuster or an attorney? Well, you can either go with one or the other, and then usually both. Usually the adjuster works first, and then he brings in the attorney.
So going back to the claim we talked about where we went to trial in Fort Myers, I talked to my clients numerous times since the trial, and I tell them how thankful I am that they were smart enough to have hired a public adjuster, because the public adjuster was able to pinpoint the storm that had caused the damage. If they had just filed it on their own and just filed it based on the date that they saw the damage, we wouldn't have had the facts lined up for us, right? So that it was the carrier already knew when the alleged date of loss was, and that was because the public adjuster had hired the correct professionals, got the proper weather data to determine when the damage to the roof actually occurred. So yeah, I mean, I can't express enough the importance of getting a professional such as a public adjuster to assist from the outset of filing a claim.
So cause of loss and date of loss. I'll let you explain that because it's so important when filing a claim, and almost every homeowner does it incorrectly.
So, again, my trial case with Citizens is the prime example. The date of the loss was determined from the professionals, was not the date that they discovered the damage. The date that they discovered the damage is just the date that they discovered it. But the damage was hidden inside the wall cavity. And so, obviously, someone had to go on the roof to inspect it, and they noticed wind damage to the roof, and they were trying to figure out, well, when was there a sufficient storm, or when were there sufficient winds from a storm to have caused the damage, and they were able to pinpoint a specific date of loss, right? So the date of loss is not necessarily the same date that you discover it. And that's a prime example, because the homeowner doesn't go on the roof every weekend to look and see if there's damage, right? They didn't discover it until that wall was open. So there's a big discrepancy that a lot of homeowners don't understand, is when they file claims on their own, if they're just picking the date that they discovered it, they might be handcuffing themselves as far as trying to obtain coverage under their policy.
Sure. I look at any kind of old hurricane claim. Let's say I report a claim because rain came in and my roof is now leaking, and I put that date of loss, and my carrier denies it because I don't have rainwater coverage. But if you were able to go on my roof, you'd see tons of damage, and you'd see, oh, this is from Hurricane Ian, so your correct date of loss was September 28th, 2022, and that's why your claim was denied.
And that's a thing that I noticed when I was on the insurance side and representing insurance companies, is the insurance companies assume if there's a storm, you're going to see water leaks that day.
Sure.
But that's not true. I mean, the truth be told is, number one, it depends on how much rain was coming that day, because there could be winds that were sufficient to cause damage to the roof, but maybe the angle of the rain was coming in a different direction where it didn't go through that opening on that specific day. Or alternatively, if you've got a roof, it's got to go through the water to get all the way to your drywall in the interior. It's got to go through several layers, right? It's not just like, oh, it gets through the shingles and then it appears.
Yeah.
You've got the underlayment, you've got the decking, you've got the attic and the insulation, and then the drywall, and it's got to saturate through the drywall. So you don't necessarily see the leak on that exact day.
You might have a little rain come in, and it dries up, and rinse and repeat until you have one big rainfall storm, 3 months later down the road.
Sure.
That might trigger it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the exact insurance claim lawsuit process to kind of let the homeowner knows what goes in from start to finish. So let's say we got a client. I send them off to you. We tell them that, or they want to file a lawsuit. They sign a retainer. Then what happens next?
Sure. So a couple years ago, a new law went into place, signed by the governor, which basically changed the procedural aspect of a lawsuit. Before is once there was a dispute, you could just file the lawsuit. That law went into effect a couple of years ago, which basically requires that you actually put the insurance company on notice before you sue them. So there's a formal notice requirement where there's a portal that is state-run. You log into the portal and you fill out this form. Once you submit the form, it automatically generates and goes out to the insurance company. So it's called a notice of intent to initiate litigation. And so the insurance company, when they get that notice, they have 10 business days under Florida statutes to respond to the notice, to let the homeowner know what their intention is to do with the claim at that point.
And I would probably say, out of X amount of claims I sent you recently, a couple of those got settled just through that notice of intent right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, look, what I've seen over the years is once you file the notice of intent, typically it goes to a new adjuster, right? So it's not the same adjuster that you might have been working with on the claim. It might be in a different department. It might be an escalated department. So a lot of times when there's another set of eyes on it and they know that a lawsuit's coming, sometimes they change their mind. So to that point, yeah, I mean, there's obviously an opportunity to try to resolve it. Again, it's a business decision. Does the insurance company want to continue to fight this, especially on a claim where they've opened up coverage and it's really just dollars and cents? So that 10 business day window is a good opportunity to try to settle the case.
So during that 10-day business or window opportunity, sometimes the carrier will also invoke alternative dispute resolutions such as mediation or appraisal.
Sure.
I'll let you speak about both of those.
Sure. So under one of the options, and again, this only applies if it's a covered loss. So if it's a denied claim, that's not one of the options under the statute. But if it is a covered loss and it's really just an issue of pricing and scoping.
So sorry to interrupt. So
Sure.
if it's a denied claim, then we're going straight to litigation.
Well, so I'll explain both avenues. So if it's a denied claim, option one is they could just stand by their decision. Say, no, we're standing by it. We think we properly denied it. See in court, right? Then we go right to litigation. The other option, well, there's three options, but the next option is they could reevaluate the claim in 10 days and actually open up coverage and issue a payment. Okay, so that's one of the options. The third option they have on a denied claim is they can actually go out and re-inspect the property. So those are the three options on a denied claim. Now on a covered loss, it's different. So covered loss, option one, same thing like on a denied claim, they could stand by their decision, say, no, we think we properly adjusted and paid this claim, right, and do nothing. Then we hopped it right into litigation. Second option is they could reach out to me, and this is what we discussed a moment ago, is to try to negotiate a settlement. They can make an offer, but they're not required to. And then option three is the alternative dispute resolution. So under that umbrella of alternative dispute resolution, there's two avenues. So avenue one is we go to a mediation, which is basically run through the Department of Financial Services. There's a mediator that's assigned, and it's a regular mediation. It's usually a Zoom hearing now because of post-pandemic situation where there's an attorney there, an adjuster from the insurance company, sometimes one of their attorneys, and then a mediator, and we try to hash it out. There's pros and cons to mediation, right? I think the pro is I have an opportunity now to talk directly to the adjuster face-to-face in a Zoom meeting to say, look, this is why the claim needs to be paid. This is why you underpaid it. Here's what we're looking for. That's the benefit. Now, obviously, the insurance company has no obligation to pay you what you want in mediation, just like there's no obligation for the homeowner to accept the results of the mediation. If they're not happy with the money that's being offered, they don't have to accept it, and then we can file a lawsuit.
Now, have you had success with mediation?
Sure. Yeah. The difficulty that I have seen in, we call them the DFS mediations, Department of Financial Services, the difficulty is a lot of times the mediators who are assigned, and again, we don't have a say, it's assigned by the state, a lot of times they're not well versed in our area of law, right? Versus if we're in a mediation in a lawsuit, we can pick what mediator we want, and I want a mediator that understands these issues. A lot of times, like for instance, I was in one, prime example, I was in one I think 2 weeks ago, and it was the mediator's first property insurance mediation. So he didn't understand anything. Nice. It was a fruitless mediation because he's basically just ping-ponging the offers and demands back and forth, but he didn't understand the issues. He didn't get it. So it was difficult because my client's like, does this guy know what he's talking about? And candidly, he didn't really know. And I don't blame him, but because he was just assigned, this is his job, and he does these types of mediations.
So now, let's say we filed the lawsuit. We weren't able to come to an agreement. No appraisal or mediation was done. So then the next phase would be discovery phase. So why not let's talk a little bit about that, what goes into there, and then how could that lead to a deposition for the client?
Sure. So whether or not you're a corporation like an insurance company or you're a homeowner individual, you have the same protections, right, from the Florida Constitution. Everybody gets their right and access to courts here. And so both sides have the equal opportunity to engage in the discovery process. So basically what that is you're just basically exchanging what information and documentation you have to support your claim, your defense, and you have to disclose it. There's a common term that we use in the industry, which is called trial by ambush. And basically what that is if you try to use something at trial that was not previously disclosed in the discovery phase, that's impermissible. You can't do that. Anything you intend to use, you've got to disclose to the other side so they have the opportunity to review it, either accept it or refute that information. So both sides engage in that process, exchanging documentation and information. And once we've compiled that, we'll know what depositions we want to take. Because I might, for instance, the insurance company might produce a correspondence that's drafted by John Smith, right? Well, now I want to know why John Smith wrote what he did in that document or in that letter to the homeowner, so I can request that person's deposition. So the key people that we want to depose is obviously the field adjuster who went out to the property. Want to know why he or she did what they did, or why they didn't do something during the course of the adjustment. And then one of the other depositions we always take in these types of insurance lawsuits is an insurance company as a corporation has the ability to designate someone as their corporate representative or the spokesperson. So that person speaks about the adjustment of the claim, and their testimony is actually binding on the entity, so on the insurance company. So whatever they say, they are not speaking as if it's them talking. They're speaking as if it's the insurance company talking. So we always take that deposition as well.